Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I'm talking about watches. Now, my first video that I released of this 10 amazing, interesting watches that made me go wow actually ended up being quite popular, and I actually really enjoyed making it. So today is a part 2 video, another 10 amazing, interesting watches that I've come across randomly whilst looking at other watches that have made me think, wow, that's really interesting. Now, these watches have not entered my collection and are unlikely to enter my collection, and that is for a few reasons. One, they might be a little bit too expensive for me, or they might just be too expensive for what they are, for me personally. They might be too small for my wrist, or that I'm comfortable with, or perhaps they're just not really readily available. For a few different reasons, they have not entered my collection. They are just interesting watches to me, interesting watches that I want to share with you guys today. Before we jump into this list of 10 interesting watches, if you guys have not subscribed to my channel yet, I'd really appreciate it if you just click on that little subscribe button. But let's jump into these 10 interesting watches. I am going to refer to my notes. There is a fair bit of watches here, there's a fair bit of information, and I want to share it with you, so please excuse whilst I look down at my notes. So, number 1 on this list is the Seiko Presage Power Reserve watch, model number SSA303J1. Now, I want to say thanks to Travis. Travis is another YouTube creator of watch content, and he brought my attention to this watch. This is a watch that actually may one day enter my collection. I'm just not quite sure. It's not really an out there watch. It's not something that people haven't come across before, but it is a watch that really has interested me lately. And I think the reason that it has interested me so much is because it really feels like a somewhat affordable version of a Grand Seiko. It just have a really lovely, interesting dial. I have to say, initially when I did see it, I wasn't overly convinced by it. That sort of power indicator reserve, the sort of sub-dial with the date indicator, it put me off slightly, but the more I looked at it and the more reviews that I looked on it, I just quite like it. Now, it does have the 4R57 movement, which is the modified 4R movement, allowing that sort of date indicator and that power reserve indicator. You can pick these ones up for around 800 Australian dollars. So they're not the most super affordable Seiko that you can buy, but they're not super expensive as well. This one in particular I like because it has the silver dial, it has that power reserve and the calendar sub indicator, it has 100 meters of water resistance, and it has those blue hands. And those blue hands on that silver dial is certainly something that interests me. And number 2 is the EGalvin watch company, the Alku White. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is a micro band from Australia, which is quite exciting. It is a really classical looking watch, has a beautiful blue hands, which I just like those blue hands on the lighter color dials. I think it does look quite good. It contains the high beat Miyota 9039 movement. It has a 38.5mm case diameter, has a lug to lug of 45, so it's a nice compact dressy looking watch, and you can pick this one up for about 649 Australian dollars, which I think is actually a pretty good price for a classy looking watch like this, with a beautiful dial like this, with those lovely blue hands, and at a nice case diameter. Number 3, now this is a watch that is known by people, but it is something that has drawn my attention a lot. It is the Mido OceanStar GMT. And from what I'm aware of, this is probably one of the best budget price versions of a mechanical true GMT movement. This one here contains the caliber 80, which is based on the ETA C07.661. It has an 80-hour power reserve, which is brilliant as well. It sells for 1,825 Australian dollars, so 1,825 Australian. So it's not super affordable, but it's not super luxury expensive either. If you are looking for a semi-entry level luxury watch, this is certainly a watch that may be worthwhile keeping attention to. It has a 44mm case diameter, 22mm lugs. So it's not the super small watch, but it's not super big either. I just think it's a beautiful looking watch. It's a very classical looking watch, and I think you could sort of wear it in almost any circumstances. It's one of those watches. Number 4 is actually another micro brand, a micro brand called Relio. This particular one is called the Solstice. It just has a really good classic look to it, and it's quite interesting. The sides of the case are really interesting, a bit different to other watches. You can pick it up quite an affordable price of $395 US. It has a 38mm case diameter. It contains the high beat Miyota 9039, 100 meters of water resistance. It comes in a few different colors, and it's just a very nice everyday looking watch. And I think it's certainly one to keep an eye on. Number 5 is actually off the AliExpress website, which is a little bit different for this list, but it is a SEAGULL watch. It is the reference number 819.12.6066. This one here I have been drawn to quite a few times, and it is actually sitting on my wish list on AliExpress. But it is just a really classically looking good looking watch. Beautiful hands, beautiful looking dial, and it comes with a good set of specs. It comes with a sapphire crystal, it has a nice 41mm case diameter, comes with a leather and a bracelet, and it has the ST16 movement inside of it. And it comes in at 320 Australian dollars, which I don't think is overpriced for this particular watch. It's slightly more expensive for the sort of AliExpress watches, but it's a good looking watch, and I'm keeping my eye on this one. And number 6 is a Beluga, reference number 96A259. Now this one is a sort of a special edition, the Hack VW1. It contains the Miyota 8520-43A. It's an automatic, obviously, has a 42-hour power reserve. It has a 38mm case diameter, and it just has a really good look to it. And when you flip the watch around, it has this really interesting coloured sort of case back, which I quite like. It obviously has a very sort of military look on the dial, but it has that sort of reference on the back as well, with that picture on the back, which looks quite good. This one's selling for every sort of day on eBay for around 420 Australian dollars. So I think it's a reasonably priced watch that looks like this, that sort of size, automatic, and it comes from a big brand that we all know. Number 7 is a watch that I had never seen before. It's a brand that I'd never seen before, but it looks absolutely fantastic. And it looked absolutely fantastic and got onto my wish list straight away until I saw the price. Now, I don't think it's overpriced, it's just sort of out of my price range. And it is and I do apologize if I say this wrong, the Damasho DC70. This is a chronograph watch that doesn't look like a chronograph watch. Basically, it is a sort of a standard watch, but with a chronograph movement. So that second hand actually becomes a sort of a stopwatch type feature. And I think it just looks very, very cool. And it's able to do that with a hand-built C51-1 movement. I'm not sure if this is an in-house movement. I don't think it is, but I think it's a bit of an interesting special movement that they've brought in for this watch. It has a hardened steel case. It is a 41mm case diameter, lug to lug of 50mm. That movement comes with a 50-hour power reserve, and yeah, it's got that stopwatch feature, but without those sub-dial, sort of chronograph sub-dials. So it has a very clean look, but it still has sort of the functionality of a chronograph. But it sells for €2,580. So it's not a super affordable watch by any means, but I think it is a really good looking watch, and I just really wanted to bring it to your attention. And number 8, unfortunately, this is not a watch that's currently available. It has sold out on the website, but it is a Vario watch, and I think it's a very interesting looking watch. It is the Empire Tuxedo, has this very sort of Art Deco inspired dial. Now, I've seen this watch around a few times in the last couple of years. I've seen a few reviews on it. It certainly looks very good, and the Vario brand is quite interesting. I think they're a nice company, nice people there, and I think they're just putting out some very interesting sort of classical style looking watches. This one, when you could spy it, was around 500 Australian dollars. It had a 38mm case diameter. It came with both a hand winding or an automatic movement, that being the hand winding Miyota 6T33 or an NH38 automatic movement. Number 9, something a little bit different again, and we're coming back to Australia. Just a very different watch, this one. Again, not super affordable, but a little bit different. And excuse me again if I don't say it right, but Bausele, which is interesting for an Australian brand because you think it'd have a bit more of an Australian name, but it's the Ocean Moon 4. This has a very Australian looking dial on it. It even has Australia on the dial itself. This one is a limited edition. It actually has Australia printed on the dial. They've only made 40 of these ones. However, you can buy this watch without the Australia on the dial, without the special edition. There are different versions of it if you don't want Australia on there. It is a 42mm case diameter. It comes with a Swiss STP1-11 automatic movement with a 44-hour power reserve. It's a high beat movement. As you can see, it's a sort of a compressor style with the dual crowns. So it has that inner rotating bezel, which I quite like that look. I've got a bit of a soft spot for that. And we're looking around about 1,200 Australian dollars, which I don't think is overpriced. I think with that high beat Swiss movement inside, and I think with those sort of looks and those dimensions, it's a very good looking watch, but it's just not something that I'm going to probably pick up. And when we flip the watch around, it has a really interesting looking case back, and I do like case backs, so it is nice to see something a little bit different. And number 10 on my list is a watch that I've been looking at for years and years and years. I have to say, it's probably one of my absolute favorite watches of all time. It is a vintage Omega. The reason I haven't picked it up is the reason why I haven't picked up more vintage watches, and why I don't have more vintage watches in my collection is because of the case diameter. These ones sort of range from 35 to 36 millimeters. There may be some other sizes out there, but when I've been looking, and I've looked a lot at these watches, they too tend to be in that sort of vintage size range. In particular, this one is the Constellation Pan. It was made from 1952 through to 1970. And I think it's one of the best looking watches out there. If you're not aware of the pie pan, the reason it's called a pie pan is if you think of a baking tray that you make pies in that has the sort of this look, well, flip it over. That is the shape of the dial on this one. So it stops off flat and it drops off on you. And you've got the indices coming up along that sort of these edges. And I think it's just a very, very good looking watch. And if you want to pick one of these up, they are readily available. You can pick up a cheaper version of it for around about 800 Australian dollars, but there's versions out there that are particularly good and even possibly in precious metals that are up to like 4,000 or 5,000 Australian dollars. I absolutely love this watch. I think it's just such a good looking watch. There's quite a few different dial variations in there as well, some with numbers, some without numbers, some with date complications, some without date complications. And I have to say, it's a watch, and it's certainly a vintage watch that I would buy if there was a slightly bigger version of it. But I know with my history, I've bought a couple of watches that were around 36 millimeters because I've particularly liked them, but I just don't end up wearing them because I just feel they're a little bit small on my wrist. However, if you're looking for an amazing looking watch, amazing vintage watch, and you don't mind that case size, well, I'd check this one out because it is stunning. I absolutely love it. So there's my 10 interesting watches that I've come up with over the last few months. If you guys seen any other interesting watches, I'd love for you to leave a comment below with what that watch is. I always like checking out new interesting watches. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. Please add a comment. Just say that you like the video. It's great to hear from you. It's really nice to hear from people all the way around the world. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next video.